Hello. Today we'll be talking with Dr. James Tunstall, Core Separations Product Manager with the specialist subject of CO2 processing. Name?
James Tunstall,
Occupation?
Product Manager for Core Separations.
Specialist subject?
CO2 processing. Maybe.
What, in your opinion, is the key parameter in a CO2 extraction?
It's probably about 4 parameters in CO2 extraction that have an effect on what you can extract using CO2. If I was to approach a problem that I'd never, a product that I'd not seen before, then I would say CO2 density is probably where I'd start. And that's a combination of both temperature and pressure. But it's a lot easier to think of density than to think about 2 parameters. And it's density that has that relationship with solubility. Generally, the trend is as we increase the density, the solubility, the ability of CO2 to solubilize compounds increases. That's a good mark for an effective CO2 extraction.
So you mentioned temperature being one of the 4 parameters. So how does temperature impact the extraction of a natural product?
So with natural products, you generally want to be keeping the temperatures relatively low because a lot of them are thermally unstable. But you've also got the fact that when you're generating a supercritical fluid, you do need to apply some heat. It needs to be above 31 degrees in order to generate that supercritical fluid. But you can also get selectivities by cooling CO2. So we're now not talking about supercritical fluid, and we're talking a high pressure liquid stream as well. By manipulating the temperature, you can get different selectivities for different compounds. So if I give you an example, when you're doing extractions of plant material, if you drop the temperature and you work in the liquid range, you have a habit of selectively reducing the amount of waxes that you can extract using the liquid, whereas if you go supercritical, you generally pull more of those waxes out.
Okay, so you've spoken of density and temperature. You mentioned that CO2 density is a combination of pressure and temperature. How does pressure impact the extraction process?
So CO2 is considered a non-polar solvent, and it actually has some properties very similar to some liquid solvents such as hexane and heptane, and the ability to extract the specific compounds. There is a good comparison between them. However, there is a trend in CO2 that as you increase the pressure, you can also increase the types of compounds that you can extract. And these compounds usually have some medium polarity to them. Now, although CO2 doesn't contain a dipole, it does actually contain a weak quadrupole. And as we increase the pressure, we find that CO2 can start to extract things like polyphenols that have some polarity to them, whereas low density streams at low pressures, they can extract things like terpenes that are generally non-polar compounds. So there is some scope in when you increase the pressure to extract different compounds, especially ones that have some polarity to them.
All right, so we've spoken of density, temperature, pressure. 3 out of the... All right, I've started, so I'll finish. So 3 out of the 4 parameters. On to the 4th, please.
So the final parameter that has an effect on CO2 extraction is the flow rate. And the flow rate relates to the solvent feed ratio within an extraction. And this is the amount of CO2 required to extract a volume of biomass. So for instance, you might have 200 grams of CO2 that's required to extract 1 gram of extract or 1 kilo of extract. So the flow rate has an impact on this and the length of time it takes to do an extraction. So once you know this solvent to feed ratio, you can basically calculate the length of time for the extraction. But it's a little bit more subtle than that. There are other effects that play an impact, and I'll give you a bit of an example. We did a project recently extracting coffee oil, and our client basically was finding that the oil itself was not very aromatic, and they were barreling in the CO2 as fast as they could put it in. They were getting great yields, but the aroma wasn't there. So we throttled back on the CO2, we added the same amount of CO2 to the extraction, and the aroma basically picked up. And that's because you've got diffusion effects, you've got CO2 velocity effects, and this all has an impact on the CO2 extraction. So flow rate is another key parameter when you're looking at this type of processing.
All right, thank you, Dr. James, for explaining these 4 extraction parameters. That was very compact and informative.
No problem. Should we go do some work now?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay. can basically tune CO2 to do anything you want. That's not true. You can't get it to dance.
So you mentioned son of a b****. You're not in the shot. Anyway, how does temperature impact the extraction of a natural product? Really?
Hello, Mr. Bob.
She wants attention. She wants it. I think
She wants to go out, actually. But should we try? Because it should only take a minute. If we can get it right with no interruptions, that would be this one done. So temperature.
Really?
Why are you doing this? Go over there. Go over there. Right, try this again. Let's go. The amount of CO2 required to extract a mass of stuff. Yeah. Ivy, what are you doing?
Nothing. Just chewing on cables.
Yeah, chewing on electrical cables.
What is the reason? What is the reason?
Just